Hello everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today we are going to look at the topic of time. When you were 10 years old, what plans did you have for your life? Maybe you had a certain college you dream of going to, or a certain career you would have. Maybe you had a certain age you wanted to get married by and the number of kids you would have. Doesn't your plan seem naive now that you lived a life a little longer? As the great theologian Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Can you imagine us telling God our life plans today? Wouldn't that seem foolish and laughable from his perspective? This is what James wants to talk about. He wants us to know that we should not live assuming everything will go as we planned. You might be thinking, what is the big deal with planning your life? James explains the problem. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go into such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. In this context, James is talking to businessmen, but this principle applies to all Christians. During this time, merchants will go on daily trips all around the Greco-Roman world. They will have to plan where they will need to go to sell things and to figure out how to maximize profits because traveling was not easy. So this type of thinking was normal. Now, what is the problem with thinking this way? The problem is not planning. If you look at the book of Proverbs, it talks about how we should wisely plan. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. So James is not condemning planning ahead. Also, the problem is not profit. James is not condemning businessmen for making a profit. If you don't make a profit, then your business will not survive. So what is the problem, James? The problem is pride. Instead of saying, I will go here, then make a profit, then come back here, James says, make sure you consider the most important person in your plan, God. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Now, James is not saying that you must add this phrase to everything you say as if it is some magic formula. If the Lord wills, I will go eat lunch. If the Lord wills, I will chew on a burger. Instead, this phrase reflects an attitude of humility. This is why James adds this. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Why is it prideful to make plans without considering God? The first reason is because you have no regard for God's sovereignty. The word boast has the idea of placing your confidence in something. So to boast is not necessarily bad. What matters is what you boast in or what you place your confidence in. So the reason why making plans without God is arrogant is because you are building your confidence on the foundation of your plans instead of God's sovereignty. When you plan without considering God's sovereignty, you are essentially telling God which areas of your life He can have a say and which areas He cannot. No, this is mine. I gave you your time on Sundays, but my life plans are mine to plan. This is the equivalent of saying to your spouse, it's not date night, so leave me alone. Living under God's sovereignty means that we make plans only with God's permission. If God does not give us permission, it doesn't matter what we plan. That is what it means to always plan with this phrase in mind, if the Lord wills. The second reason why it is prideful to plan without considering God is that you do not consider man's mortality. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. The word mist is a rare word within the Bible and is often translated as vapor. But the concept of this word comes from the book of Ecclesiastes. The author of this book pursued all the wisdom and riches of the world, and his final words in this book is that life is just a vapor. It is here 1 minute and gone the next. So James takes this concept and says the same thing. Our life is just a vapor. It is like a morning fog, here in the morning and gone by night. So when you make plans for your life, James tells us to remember that we are fragile creatures. Considering eternity, our lives is just a blip on the radar. So why would you be confident in your plans for your life? How should we respond to the reality of God's sovereignty and our mortality? So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him, it is sin. James says that now that we know the right thing to do, which is to make plans considering God's sovereignty and our mortality, and if we still go on making plans without God, then we are sinning. Jesus said it like this in a parable. And that servant who knew his master's will but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. In other words, since you know that God is your king, then to make plans outside of God's will is sin. So how should we plan our life according to God's will? Prioritize your lives according to God's priorities. First, this means that you must prioritize your money according to God's priorities. Listen to the story Jesus gave about money. And he told them a parable saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? Soul is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. What this means is that when you make plans with your money, make it according to the way God would want you to use your money. God has given you money to spend for his kingdom, not to scratch your materialistic itch. And if you end up spending all your money for yourself instead of God, do you know what will happen in the end? You will have a lot of barns that you can't take with you to the grave. Second, you must prioritize your time according to God's priorities. When you don't prioritize your time, other unimportant things will fill up your time. Jesus did not do everything for everyone. He often ran away from the crowds to have time with God in prayer. Growing up, he didn't minister to people but learned how to be a carpenter to provide for his family. So we see that Jesus did different things at different seasons according to God's priorities. How did Jesus prioritize his time? Look at what he said. For the works that the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works that I am doing. Jesus' attitude to his time is that he will only do what God wants him to do, nothing less and nothing more. If God wants me to go to this place and minister to people, that's what I'll do. Now you might be thinking, but I'm not Jesus. Yes, that might be true, but the principle remains. The way to make plans with God's priorities is to plan each day with the same attitude. So instead of making plans for your life, plan your money and time according to God's priorities so that you can live out God's purposes for your life. Thank you to today's sponsor, All Reverence. They offer a free digital worship music app called Maskil. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about prideful fighting, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. And until next time, see you.